good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy. Back from Town Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on a budget on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby, it's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, and start checking out those links in the description below. I'd really appreciate it. But today, and this week, we're kind of covering some random commanders, and today I thought I would go back and take another gander at Tuvasa the Sunlit. This is a 3-mana Bant commander, Merfolk Shaman. It says Tuvasa gets +1/+1 for each enchantment we control, and then whenever we cast our first enchantment each turn, we get to draw a card. There's a lot of different ways you can take Tuvasa. I kind of decided to go the auras route, trying to enchant creatures, getting them that way. Using them to also buff Tuvasa as well to turn her into a threat, especially auras that give her things like flying or trample, and just try to, work our way in towards hurting our opponents. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit earlier for just $1 a month, consider checking that out down below. There's a lot of different ways you could take a deck like this, and I just tried my best to pick a bunch of creatures that really care about auras, and then, of course, auras to put on anything we have. Arcana Sun's Grace makes those 2/2 Pegasi whenever enchantment comes into our control and gives them lifelink. Calyx says whenever it or another enchantment comes in, we get to put a counter on one of our creatures, and then whenever it or an enchanted creature we control hits a player, get to create a token of a non-legendary enchantment you control that only goes off once per turn, so we can copy a key aura or a key enchantment and get a multiple of it. Elevere, that precon commander from Wilds of Eldraine, whenever it enters or attacks, we make a virtuous roll token, which is basically like another copy of Tuvasa's effect. We just get to attach it to another creature we control. And then whenever one of our enchanted creatures hit a player, we get to draw a card, which is pretty fun. And those virtuous rolls can really become a threat if we could stack multiples of them up. Ivy says whenever a player casts a spell that targets a single creature other than Ivy, we get to copy that spell and it targets Ivy. This is a really interesting ability, but most of the time what this is going to allow you to do is play auras on your other creatures and grow Ivy at the same time, her being in the air. Catilda is a star where star is the number of spirits or enchantments we control, which is a really nice ability, and flying and lifelink means you have a chance to gain some nice life back. Lightpaw says whenever an aura enters the battlefield under our control, if we cast it, we can go search our library for an aura with mana value less than equal to it and attach it to Lightpaws, which is a very interesting ability and can really help us soup up Lightpaws quickly, right? If we have a lot of enchantments on the battlefield, we'll talk about enchantments that have that ability. It can be fetched for us. Pearlier, another body with lifelink that says whenever we cast an aura spell that targets a modified permanent we control, we draw a card. So if we cast an aura that targets a creature that's already enchanted or already has a counter on it, we're going to draw a card. Stessa Champion gets a counter and draws us a card whenever another enchantment comes in. And Transcendent Envoy is just going to flat reduce the cost of our auras. So you can start to see that all these creatures that we're going to have alongside of us to enchant do in some way care about auras or help us out, and they're going to be great bodies alongside Tuvasa to enchant. But where the deck's really going to shine right is the auras we're going to put on our creatures. Things like All That Glitters, which gives +1/+1 for each enchantment we control or artifact, but mainly enchantment. And Central Mass, 2/2/2 for each other enchantment in play, not just on our side, but on everyone's side. Angelic Gift, giving the creature it enchants flying and draws this card when it comes in, is great. And give Tuvasa some nice natural evasion, right? Our Armadillo Cloak, giving a creature +2/+2 and trample, and effectively gives it lifelink. Audacity +2/+0 and trample, which is a really nice way to give our creatures trample and or Tuvasa. Bear Umbra gives a creature +2/+2 whenever it attacks. We untap all lands we control, and then adds Totem Armor. Then Totem Armor says when a creature would be destroyed, you instead remove all damage from it and destroy this aura instead. Cartouche of Knowledge gets that creature in the air and draws us a card whenever it enchants. Ethereal Armor, +1/+1 for each enchantment you control and gives out First Strike. Favor the Overbeing. If the enchanted creature is green, gives out Vigilance. If it's blue, it gives out Flying. Feather Flight, another one that gives creature flying and draws this card when it comes in. Rancor heads out Trample. Rune of Might, again, draws this card when it comes in and hands out Trample. Rune of Sustenance draws us a card and hands out Lifelink. Reverie's going to buff the creature for each aura we control that's attached to a creature. Shelter by Ghost gives a lifelink and ward 2, and then can exile a non-land permanent an opponent controls for as long as we control Sheltered by Ghosts. Shield of the Oversoul and Steal the Godhead are another examples of these ones that give out abilities depending on what color the creature is. Oversoul, indestructible if it's green, flying if it's white, Godhead, lifelink if it's white, and unblockable if it's blue. So you can start to see these are some really nice auras, right? And then Staggering Insight, giving out lifelink and drawing a card whenever it connects. Very similar to Armadillo Cloak, Unflinching Courage, hands out Trample and Lifelink. Tempest Technique is a very interesting enchantment because it's basically another copy of something like All That Glitters, but the difference is that it has Storm. So if we cast multiple spells before it, we can actually get multiple copies of Tempest Technique down. Same thing with Strength of the Harvest. Basically going to be a All That Glitters, but with upside because it counts our creatures and our enchantments. And if we needed it to, Strength of the Harvest could be a land on the backside. But I don't think it's enough to just play a bunch of auras. Like, we also want, more things to interact. I mean, in any Enchantress deck, you still want to draw. So you still have things like Enchantress's Presence that's going to draw you cards. We're playing a lot of effects like Copy Enchantment, Estrid's Invocation, and Mirror Maid to copy enchantments we control. That way you could come in and get a second copy of a key aura on one of your creatures. Helm of the Gods kind of acts as another All That Glitters. It's an equipment. And then Sphere of Safety, right? Preventing our opponents from attacking us. Equal to the amount of enchantments we control they have to pay for each creature, trying to stop our opponents from, cracking too hard back. Sterling Grove, right, protecting all of our enchantments. You can sack an instant speed to go search for anything and put it on top. Stonely Silence going to lock down artifacts, hopefully locking our opponent's mana rocks down while allowing all of our enchantments to still do what we want to do. And then a really fun effect that we're hoping to see early if we can is Vesuvian Duplimancy. Whenever we cast a spell that targets only a single artifact or creature we control, we create a token that's a copy of that artifact or creature, except it isn't legendary. This is really great for Tuvasa because then you can have multiple copies of them, right? But there's other, of course, creatures in the deck we'd love to have multiple copies of, right? Ivy, Catilda. There's so many nice creatures in the deck that we'd love to have 2 or 3 of, and so the Duplimancy really works when you're trying to slam down these auras right on our creatures. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is our first shot at Tuvasa in a while, and I think going into testing, the question's probably going to be, do we have enough ways to dig for more auras? I love something like Songbird's Blessing. Whenever the enchanted creature attacks, you reveal from the top to a hidden aura, and you can put it on the battlefield, if you want to. Otherwise, you put it into your hand. That allows you to dig off the top for more. We have Danitha from Margin Machine the Aftermath, which is going to allow us to get auras back out of our graveyard once per turn and cast them. That feels really nice, especially when Danitha packs Trample, Lifelink, and Vigilance already. Another great target to buff. And then we have more of these Totem Armor or Umbra Armor enchantments as it got renamed that can protect our creatures, but also give out abilities. There are things we can look at. There's a whole line of them that are out there, and they're all fairly cheap as ways to protect our creatures. Well, let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtests. Remember, the goal of playtests on our channel is not to find Magical Christmas Land. It's not just to show off all our best plays, but it's to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand what hands are we going to look to keep and how we're going to set up. Here we got all 3 of our colors and a Reliquary Tower. Really nice when you're trying to draw cards. We see a couple auras, which is great. We want to see those to start. Sithis is a great draw. So Sithis is a creature that says whenever we cast an enchantment spell, we draw a card. I really like this because then we can get Tuvasa in, who unfortunately isn't an enchantment, but that's okay. She's still going to be useful. So here my thought is Ivy. Right, now you have another nice target for these guys. And then I would start to go for a aura. I'm thinking something like Staggering Insight. Remember that Ivy's ability is going to make a copy of it going there. We draw 1 and 2, right? 1 from Sithis, 1 from Tuvasa. Then now we have Ivy, who's starting to become a nice threat with that ability to attack in. Tuvasa can attack this turn. It has +1/+1, I think. So it's a 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 right now, lifelink. So we can get in and deal some damage there if we want to. But now coming back to our turn, I think the Reliquary Tower might make more sense this turn, just in case we draw too much. Note that Ivy goes off every time we do a creature other than Ivy. So, I mean, if we go for something like Ancestral Mask, we're going to get a copy there. If we go for Shelter with Ghost, again, we're going to get a copy there. So, the nice thing here about Ivy is it's really going to help us get some big value. I think I like Ancestral Mask here. Again, you're going to get a copy, draw 2, right? 1 for each cast here. At least it's with what? 2 mana? I don't think there's anything we can do. I guess we wouldn't technically have had to have used the white. So we could still have room for Shelter by Ghost, if we wanted to do this. And Sithis will still draw us off the cast. But again, now you have both of these. They have lifelink. They also both have Ward 2. They're going to get a pretty big buff because each of these Ancestral Masks gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment in play. So they're effectively all going to end out for the same because they don't count themselves. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So each of them are getting +12/+12, right? Plus the things on them. Now the only hope here is that the ward, and that's going to be enough to get around something like a destruction based removal. But again, you've picked up a couple key permanents. You've got both of these as real threats. Tuvasa's are also getting just the buff for itself, having 7 enchantments on the battlefield. And now, I mean, we're just going to be off to the races. Neither this Tuvasa isn't in the air, but Ivy is. So Ivy's going to be a really nice threat. They have life links. You're gaining life back. We're going to end up drawing a couple cards, probably off at least one of them hitting damage. And now you just keep the party going. I mean, we haven't found any way to give Tuvasa flying just yet, but you have Mirror Maid, which could come in as a copy of Ancestral Mask. Note that Mirror Maid won't activate Ivy because it's not an aura that triggers on the on cast, but it's still very useful. Same thing with Estrids, right? They could enter in as a copy of Ancestral Mask and then they would automatically attach, but they won't target. So that's the other thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind. But here, I mean, unless somebody finds the removal, we're just living the dream here, right? Stacking Ivy and Tuvasa up and going to town. Playtest 2 here, another 3-lander with Ancestral Mask. There's Light Paws. We see Eidolon Blossoms for some draw. So ideally, you want to see some more. I was going to say, ideally, you'd want to see another land here. I like the idea of Light Paws. Right, Light Paws can be really helpful to get us access to some more things quickly. Sun Battle Grove. I guess the question is, do we go for something like Ancestral Mask? It would allow to draw us a card and go get a key, aura onto Light Paws, or do we just play the Blossoms, right, draw 2, and then try to fund next turn? Because now we're drawing more. That Eidolon of Blossoms is a constellation, so now we're just going to draw on enchantments entering. I think we're all good on the card draw there. I was going to say even something like Light Paws, just to have another thing to enchant, right? Another threat to enchant. So on the first play, I'm drawing here, I'm drawing here. And then if Light Paws draws, I'm drawing again. So that'd be 3 draws. I run the risk of losing cards out of my hand, right? But I guess I have things like Mesa, Enchantress, and Pearlier. That their draw isn't as important now with 2 pieces of draw. But I still like Pearlier, right, as a threat. So I think I'm going to do the Sustenance on Tuvasa. That's a draw from Tuvasa, a draw from the Sustenance, and a draw from Eidolon of Blossoms. I mean, I can have Light Paws go off. There's a couple nice key 1-mana enchantments, Rancor, Ethereal Armor, right? There's some options, but I think I'm okay for the moment. I'm trying to hold some room open in my hand, right? Sorry, we would have had to have pitched there. I think I'll pitch the Enchantress. Pitch a land, I guess. So as we come back to our turn, right, you play the land, 6 mana. Ancestral Mask is a really dangerous option, right? Because now you can really buff a creature. And we almost want to do Light Paws then to go get something like, again, All That Glitters or Ethereal Armor to really buff. This on Tuvasa would give her flying. on its cast, I'm gonna draw, right? On its enter, Eidolon of Blossoms would try to draw me a card. I'll do that first, and then we'll go. Well, there you go. That takes out one of the two options I was gonna go with. So I guess we'll go with Ethereal Armor now on Light Pause, which also draws me another card. I've still got 4 mana left. I love the Duplimancy now. That seems to make more sense because then I can start copying. Right. Now I can start copying Tuvasa for more threats. Now Tuvasa is going to get in really cheap here. Sorry, that draws me again. Tuvasa is going to be able to get in cheap here, right? Since it has flying. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 enchantments. So it has a nice buff and it's going to attack. End of turn, I think I can safely pitch probably something like Sanctum Weaver now. Because now as we come back to this turn, anything that targets Tuvasa is just going to make a copy of it, which is now ideal because then we can just have multiple Tuvasas. So, you put something like Rancor on it, you're going to get a copy. I think I'm going to do the 2 mana for Ivy, play the Rancor. We get a copy of it attached to Ivy. Draw, make a copy of Tuvasa off of the Duplimancy. And it is a cast on Duplimancy, so it doesn't count, right, for that Ivy. And then my thought is, well, probably Ancestral Mask, right? Copy attached to Ivy, another copy of Tuvasa. Draw. I realize we're drawing a ton off of Eidolon of Blossoms here. We're just going to end up pitching cards. But I think this is a nice ideal scenario because we're just really loading up those two. And then now, off even Ancestral Mask, we could go for maybe like a Feather of Flight or something on Light Pause if we want to get it in the air. It would make a copy of Light Pause if we wanted it to. Put a copy of Feather of Flight. No, it didn't target, so never mind. Wouldn't put a copy of Feather of Flight on Ivy. But again, here's a nice board state. Again, still pretty weak to removal, right? But that's one of those things with an Aura's deck is you're always going to be kind of weak to removal, and you need to remember that that's your biggest threat is single turn removal. Here on Playtest 3, 4-lander here, we get the Aqueous form, which can make Tuvasa unblockable, which is really nice. Estrid allows us to untap all of our enchanted permanents, which is kind of nice on her +2, or her -1 makes a aura that's just named Mask, and it basically just gives that totem armor. So that's not actual, there's no actual stats to it. It just gives out totem armor, and it's another +1 for Tuvasa. And then we see Pearlier there. Again, off the draw, we see Sithis, which I love. Sithis is just another great way to get some more card draw as we're kind of ramping our way up here. Cartouche would basically draw me 3. I think I'm gonna go Estrid and then just mask up Tuvasa just to start protecting her. That comes in tapped. Rancor feels good. I mean, I almost want to go 1, 2, 3. Right. Let's see what we dig into. Rancor here, draw, right? Because we draw off of Tuvasa and we draw off that Sithis for the cast. And then I've still got 3 mana left. I love the idea of something like just Shield, just to give it indestructible. Start trying to get it, a little bit safe. But you also could go for something like Cartouche. We could go for the Aqueous form to make it unblockable. They can just shield, draw, tick up Estrid to untap after they attack. But again, Tuvasa is a 3/1, 4/1, 5/1, or 4/1, 4/2, 5/3, 6/3, 7/3, 6/4, 7/4, 8 power, 9 power, and then whatever the toughness is. So again, a nice attack here with trample. And then now on this turn, 6 mana. You could stick Catilda alongside as a nice piece there. You could put the ghosts on her, remove something away, give it ward, drop a couple, and then my thought is, you could get Aqueous form in and draw, minus down, thought you could put a mask on something like Catilda just to protect it. And then again, we're in great shape. Tuvasa is becoming a brutal attacker here, especially with that added lifelink. And then we're just going to continue to add pieces. The only thing we would love to do is try to get into something like ethereal armor or all that glitters or ancestral mask. But again, you don't mind that, you have the Steel of the Godhead to give it unblockable. The aqueous forms on Catilda now making it unblockable. You have ways to copy them with things like Mirror Maid. This can help us draw. We're drawing, right? So this is the thing we want to see. We're seeing the pieces come in. We're seeing the draw digging through our deck, and we're finding, right, some decent pieces. But let's do one more playtest here. Keep it a 3-lander, but there's the Elevere to start handing out those Virtuous Roll tokens. We see Calyx, we see Catilda, we see the Rune. I love seeing Sanctum Weaver. Sanctum Weaver is one of those cards that can start adding mana for each enchantment you control, which again is going to start ramping up right as the game goes on. I get the Duplimancy in here. I'd have 2 mana. Rune of Sustenance. Make a copy of Tuvasa, draw a card. Feels pretty good to me. Come to this turn. 5 mana. But remember, Sanctum's going to tap for 1, 2, 3, so 8 mana total. I thought his Elevere Virtuous Roll on Tuvasa, basically giving it another copy of that key effect. And then 4 mana left. Remember, Sanctum can only add 1 color, though. Just trying to think of what's the best way to do this and just draw, but I think just get Catilda and attack with Tuvasa. Now that it's got lifelink, it should be hitting pretty hard, and if it hits somebody, we get to draw a card. Coming back to our turn. Whenever we cast our first enchantment, we're drawing 2 now because we got 2 Tuvasa. So I'll cast the Calyx. It's gonna come in. I'll put the counter on this Tuvasa, I guess. Again, still we got a lot of mana from the Sanctum Weaver. Remember, Elevere is going to attack, which is going to make another Virtuous Roll token, probably on something like Catilda, right? Note that when we hit somebody this turn with an enchanted creature, we can make a copy of something with Calyx. I don't even mind, making a copy of Sanctum Weaver if we want to, just to get more mana. I mean, now we're unfortunately the thing we're down on is the card. But remember, this can draw us cards, which is nice. So, Catilda came in last turn, now can attack. I think I'd put the monstrous roll or the virtuous roll on it. So now this is guaranteed to hit since it's in the air probably. And then this is just going to hit hard. And now same thing with this Tuvasa, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, this one's still a 7/7. So this is still hitting hard as well. I mean, you probably pick up at least 1 card. Make a copy of the Rune on this one just to draw a card is my thought, right? And then, unfortunately now we're really just running out of cards in our hand, which kind of stinks. But I mean, the nice part now is you've got Elevere drawing us cards, and it's attacking off its own ability to get you the Virtuous Roll token. You're still going to try to get that damage through. You could even attack this turn, get the Virtuous Roll on Calyx, use Calyx's ability to get the Virtuous Roll on Elevere, and then just Winds of Wrath to, knock a bunch of the board out. So there's a lot of things we can do on that one. But you see the Duplimancy. Obviously, if we had drawn another Aura, put it on Tuvasa, right? Get another one. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Tuvasa down in the comment section below? Really interesting commander. Pretty budget on this one. I really didn't go too deep on pretty expensive pieces, but obviously there's things you can add that'll get more expensive if you want to. But I think the deck works pretty well in a nice budget fashion. And this section of characters creatures could really be anything you want it to be. Spin it towards something you like. Find the creatures you like, throw them in here, and have a good time. But I'd love to know what you think down in the comment section below. And I will catch you on the next.